I am so excited about who we are having today. Dr. Juliana Hauser, who is one of the most, and I cannot wait for this conversation. So here we go. Let's see. Invite. She's been invited. See how this works. There she is. This is always the fun part. It's like the magic that happens. Okay, I'm inviting one more time. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, she's unable to join. I don't know why. Hold on. We'll try again.
I'm here. Yes.
It worked.
Hi, so good to see you.
So good to see you. I have to tell you, that wallpaper makes me happy every time I see you behind it. I'm like, it's so delightful and disarming and
It's a
lovely,
lot. It's a
and
lot.
it really, but it's amazing. It's
Oh,
so
you're so
well done.
sweet. Great. Well,
Bravo.
thank you. It makes me smile, which is why I got it all. So I'm glad. It's good to see you.
Good to see your
It's
face. It's been
so good to see
forever.
you. It has been.
Um, well, happy May and happy almost Mother's Day, by the way, if I don't tell you.
Same. Same to you. Happy Mother's
Yeah,
Day. Yes.
is a big one. Okay, I am so excited for this conversation.
Me too.
One, because it's you, and I feel like,
Same.
you know, our meeting on the bus in Orlando was kismet.
Yes. I agree. I agree. Yes.
it, it was the best. And then secondarily, those of us at HotPause Health could not be more enthralled and just dedicated and really value what you're doing,
Mhm.
both as a therapist with your sexual health, but also with mental health and midlife and women going through perimenopause and menopause. And so cannot wait to dive into this conversation because we know, I mean, I personally
Mhm.
know, and a lot of our community, often talks about their struggles with mental health. And so it is Mental Health Awareness Month for those of
Yes.
you who have not gotten the memo, scrolling, just, FYI. And but do you mind if I do a quick intro for you?
Oh, please. Yeah. I want to say first, I thank you so much for highlighting this topic and for heralding the work that you and HaPaz are doing. It's just so important. And I'm really grateful to have this conversation with you
I
today.
am too. Okay. So we are joined today by Dr. Juliana Hauser, who I met in a bus in Orlando, Florida. And I feel like it's a good bar joke. Like, what happens when you meet a sex therapist in a bus in Orlando, Florida?
Right.
But anyway, and she has an illustrious, amazing 20-year career as a sexual health educator and expert. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She has her PhD, I'm reading it, in counseling education, which is, I think, so fascinating. And I mean, I can't even imagine how much that informs
Yeah.
the work that you do with patients. Um, you really, and you said this when we were in Orlando on the stage, and I thought it like blew my mind, but you help and support people discover their own sexual agency. And I want to read the quote that you said, and it like blew me away, which was, when you know yourself as a sexual being, that is the final frontier of self-development. And I thought, oh, well, that's really profound. And like, do I know myself? That was my first thought. But
Yes.
second, I thought,
Oh, shit. Yes, right.
she is fucking brilliant. Like, that is
Oh.
so profound. Anyway, unreal. Um, and that you have a thriving private practice. You are an author, you're an educator, you're a podcaster, you are an author of an upcoming book, which is so incredible this fall, which, by the way, we will be following up on this because it's so amazing. And it's called A New Position on Sex, A Guide to Greater Self-Confidence, Pleasure, and Authenticity. And I love the authenticity part.
Oh, great. You know how long it took to come up with that, to decide how we were going to come up.
I
That
know,
means a lot to hear the
but
tagline
like
worked. Yeah.
the pleasure part makes sense and the confidence part makes sense, but the authenticity
Mhm.
is really important. And I just love that you included that.
Thank you.
So,
Because
so smart.
agency, as you said, like agency is a foundation of my work, and not a lot of people know the term agency. So authenticity is the closest that we can have, and it's important to me because the foundation of my work is that I'm an expert, but I'm not an expert on you, and my job is to help you become an expert on whatever topic it is that we're talking about, whether it's about sex, menopause, or whatever. And thank you for heralding that also.
It's amazing. It's just, again, like mind blown. So I want to kind of ground what we're talking about today because it's a sensitive topic.
Mhm.
Um, it's a really personal topic, and it can be, there's a rawness to it, and I think that so many women suffer from it, maybe unconsciously or consciously.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to start there. And then I also just want to say that we are going to parking lot that Dr. Juliana is doing incredible research. And so at the end of this, really want to make sure that women understand how they can participate, support, and engage with you on that research, which we'll do a follow-up, but just so everybody knows, that's kind of the punchline here.
Right.
Um, and you and I have had this conversation a few times now, but what is that connection as you're navigating and doing this discovery in your personal and professional career of increased mental health symptoms and perimenopause and menopause?
hmm So the caveat to everything I'm about to say is that we don't have enough research and we don't have enough information. And a lot of what I'll be saying to you are coming from studies that weren't actually studying this, but it was like a side effect of like, oh, wait a second. And we're doing a lot of deduction, but also it's coming from my private practice and talking to thousands of women through workshops and menopause events, and discovering that this is absolutely a trend. And the crux of it is that in perimenopause and menopause, there is a hormonal shift that happens, and it happens in perimenopause very erratically. In menopause, it can happen pretty drastically, but it's still a transformation of our whole body to this new way of interacting with hormones at a different level. Those hormonal changes and shifts make us more susceptible for mental illness symptoms, and for changes in our mood with anxiety and depression. And that's the baseline. And I think we all know that when we talk about PMS, we talk about our reactions to like our monthly cycles, and
Right.
not everyone has that. Like that's not everyone's
Yeah.
symptom, but we know that it's something people joke about, we talk about, and the vast majority of those who experience menstruation experience. What's fascinating to me, and I have to always temper myself because I start getting really upset, is if we know this with our periods and our menstruation, then it's so clearly going to be an issue for us in perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
And it is one of the leaders of discussions in during PMS. We're talking about our emotional changes. Same, and and I'm grateful for that change.
Yeah.
Same with when we're having a baby. If your a body is pregnant, we know we have hormonal changes. We talk about that. Like you can't watch a commercial without sobbing,
Yeah.
or just everything is emotionally harder. We have thankfully a much more focus on postpartum
Yeah.
depression because we know that after pregnancy we have a hormonal shift. So why in the world is the emphasis, and I mean emphasis, on the hormonal changes that are going to absolutely affect our mental health in perimenopause and menopause? It
Yeah.
just does. And it's fascinating. We'll talk more about my research, but one of the questions I asked in the very beginning of the survey is, did you know that mental health changes was one symptom of perimenopause and menopause? And it changes kind of daily what the number is, but I checked about an hour ago, and the statistic was 70% did not know that it was a symptom. That is
Staggering.
absolutely, it's not acceptable that we don't know that that's the case. And I think it's probably even higher. We just put it to like, oh, well, that's aging, or yeah, that's menopause. That's not a symptom of menopause. It is what we have to accept, which again isn't the case as well. I want to get more specific because I think that this helps also,
Yeah.
because it's pretty vague to say that menopause is that your hormones are changing. I liked when I learned more about this. So estrogen and progesterone are going to be the two biggest changes, testosterone also, but estrogen and progesterone are the two biggest changes during this time
Yeah.
period. And estrogen's interaction with our mental health is that it is a big mood regulator. And so it helps us keep that even keelness. It helps us to have a new relationship with
Yeah.
our hormones. It also helps with cognitive clarity, which is a huge answer that a lot of people give, that they're having brain
Brain
fog, they're
fog.
having memory loss, all of those short-term memory and can't think of words. It also, estrogen is related to emotional resiliency. So knowing that estrogen is it changes a lot, either erratically during perimenopause, like that zone of chaos, or in menopause that we have just the steady decline. If we are losing our mood regulation hormone, our emotional resiliency and cognitive clarity, that is huge for us. And so obviously when we had that taken away, we had less
Yeah.
of all of those things and less access to it. I would say that when women talk about, when I ask more detailed questions about their mental health, it is, I hear things like, what made me nervous before or worried, I now have a panic
Right.
attack over. It's an
Right.
increase of that, or it just worry feels different inside of my body now, and that is because of estrogen and the change of estrogen. Um, when we look at progesterone has a calming effect. It's one of the reasons why a lot of times they'll prescribe progesterone at night, that it helps with sleep, but it also helps with, it has a calming effect to us that naturally we want to have. It also is declining, either erratically declining or gradually, which has a relationship with the increase of women saying that they have rage, or their anger feels very different, or even just a rise of irritability. If we're losing the calming effect of progesterone, we're going to be losing that ability to have that kind of experience. They've also described progesterone as a stress buffer.
Yeah.
So it's, instead of having like stresses over there, and there's a perspective of it,
Right.
a loss of progesterone can help you. It takes away that ability, and now everything feels more immediate. It feels more myopic. It feels more catastrophic.
Right.
And I think that is really important, because we know that that culture makes fun of the emotional changes that we have in PMS and now perimenopause and menopause, and it isn't funny. It isn't a joke. It isn't this like, oh, hormones make you do it. It actually is taking away our
Yeah.
ability, and we have to almost relearn. It's almost like learning to walk again, is learning to how to relate and control and regulate our
Yeah.
emotions. Both of those things, estrogen and progesterone declining, and then testosterone, is changing our sleep too. It's a
Yeah.
huge complaint that
Yeah.
people have, that they can't fall asleep, or they can't stay asleep, or like everyone's awake between 2 and 4 in the morning. Like just all the perimenopause, menopause women are, yes, hello, with that, me too. Like
And then
y'all
you know,
should just be.
I just write like I'm like, and then,
Yes. Yes. Right. Right. And so we're all awake. And if we're awake and we're not getting good sleep, then
yeah.
lack of sleep is absolutely
Yeah.
related to a change in mental
Yeah.
health, also. And then the last hormone I want to kind of talk about is testosterone. We know that that is also changing. And what people talk about the most is a lack of energy, a lack of motivation, a lack of a rise in procrastinating, a rise in just kind of not caring anymore.
Flat.
Yes, just
Flat
a
soda.
blunted way. Yeah, just like everything feels gray, or just I don't. What brought me joy doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've seen on my survey that was so upsetting to me is I asked a question, because a lot of it felt very negative, and I was like, well, let's talk about joy. Let's talk about pleasure. And so I asked, and I was stunned. I really expected there to be a different statistic, and it is the number may have changed, but it's still statistically very high. I asked, how many of these symptoms have you experienced? It was increase in joy, increase in pleasure, and increase of self-worth. And as of this morning, 81% said they have not experienced an increase of any of those three. 81%. And that is, again, this is a generalization, that
Yeah.
and this is not, a number of 1,000 yet, although that's where I'm heading. To have that be consistently that people are not experiencing that, it's not just to blame on testosterone, but there is an absolute correlation
Yeah.
between those hormones.
I mean, I think that, and you just explained a range of symptoms from anxiety where, we've heard from our community, like, I can't drive over a bridge. Like, I have
Mhm.
debilitating anxiety where I used to just cruise around and bop and drive and do my thing. And then all of a sudden I can't drive across a bridge.
Mhm.
Like, there, there's a demarcation. Um, I think when you use the word resilience, it's fascinating because that correlation to rage, and I'll speak for
Yes.
myself,
Mhm.
is my ability to be elastic and
Mhm.
flex and take in, it's gone. It's literally bone on bone, and
Yes.
I can go from zero to napalm. I mean, napalm. Like, I can
Right. Mhm.
eviscerate
Yeah.
anyone, from my children to my husband. Like, I have nothing, and there's no
Mhm.
warning system. There's like no tsunami warning system. Like,
Yes, it's
get
so true.
shelter.
Yeah.
I have
Hmm.
no sheltering system for anybody. And so I think that, and I feel terribly. I
Yes.
mean, like, then I feel like a child where I'm like, I'm sorry I reacted that way. I shouldn't have
Hmm.
reacted that way. Now I want to
Yes.
apologize to everybody for my
Hmm.
behavior because I can't regulate
Hmm.
that reaction. And I'm clearly, I'm a self-reflective human, but
Yes.
I can't do it.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
think that so many women, that I love that notion of that resiliency, that elasticity of being able to flex or ebb. And I think, and I would love your perspective on this and maybe what you're hearing. And some of us know the statistics around divorce rates, suicide
Hmm.
attempts and thoughts,
Hmm.
and that this window of time for women in perimenopause, menopause, to your point, it's not funny. This is not like, it really needs to be addressed because very important critical behaviors are beginning to show up, or not just beginning,
Hmm.
have shown up for a long time, and
Yeah.
we haven't attributed them to a source.
Yes.
So can you talk to that a little bit, just to kind of
Yeah.
that?
And it's so, I think another thing that you're talking about, when you and I laugh because I relate so much to what you're saying too, and I hear so many, but also it's not
It's
funny.
not.
It's funny and it's
It's
not funny.
terrible.
When I talk with women, in my practice or at workshops speaking about this, I hear myself sounding like what I talk to parents who are dealing with teenagers, and I'm saying to them, they feel terrible that they're acting this way. They may seem very high, they may seem like they're just full of it, but inside they are suffering, that they feel this kind of anger. That's the same thing for women in perimenopause and menopause, and it feels
Yeah.
awful. I mean, yes, we want to atone for the way that we're acting, but it also feels awful to be like, and I'm sorry again, and I'm sorry
It's
again,
not. It's all
and
the time.
right, yeah, and it's and I think part of the reaction is, and this is how I've been trying to help frame it for women, is because we haven't been educated that this is coming. And even if the symptom may not be yours, it's going to come for a friend. It's going to change a friendship. It's going to change relationships. And we need to know this for ourselves and for each other. But the likelihood is that some kind of mental health issue is going to be coming forward to you. So we're surprised, and even we make fun of it, even we make light of it, but because we're caught off guard and we aren't pre-educated that is coming, and
Right.
to be able to shore ourselves up for this and get the techniques in place and make sure we're proactively doing therapy or having these conversations with our providers, then we're surprised. We don't have the resiliency to help us with this surprise. We don't have the tools, and we don't have the research that are telling us what therapy and what psychotropic medicine, if that's the case that you want to use, is going to work. We don't have any, so we're sitting here going like, oh, that's an annoying driver yesterday to today's. I feel like it would be fabulous to ram my car up against this car, you mother, you like that kind of thing. And I had a client who said I could use this example, who's just the dearest, sweetest soul, and she's in perimenopause. And she's like, I had a road rage like inside my head yesterday that she's like, it would have felt so fabulous to hit this car who was being awful. And I was in it, I was so in it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh God, like that is not me.
Do you
And
remember?
you
Do you
know,
remember that scene in Fried Green Tomatoes
yes,
when Kathy Bates is in the parking
yes,
lot and just I'm like, if
yes.
there is not an epitome, like a
Hmm.
encapsulation of how
Yes,
it feels sometimes, we're like, I'm just gonna
yes,
smack. I mean,
yes.
that's the moment.
Right. And I love that movie so much. There's so much about that. Was so forward thinking. But I think the other part is even when I say this, even when I bring up talking about road rage or talking about those
Yeah,
feelings, I feel protective of women because we have had this weaponized against us for so long. And our generation that's doing perimenopause and menopause right now, in particular, has really experienced a big backlash. And it's in a lot of ways not safe right now and who we are as women.
yeah, agree.
And so to highlight, and let's just own that we're having issues with knowing what our anger is and knowing what our sadness is and all of that is very vulnerable. And so again, we need to arm ourselves with more tools. You said something earlier that I really want to double down on.
Yeah,
And although we know that saying scary things often doesn't change people's behavior, I hope this will be remembered that some of the new research that's coming out is that they're seeing that women in perimenopause are 7 times more likely to have a suicidal thought than in any other age. 7 times. That's absolutely tragic for me to hear. And it's a number that even as clinicians, we're not seeing because we weren't trained to ask and
yeah,
to look out for it. There's no screening that's happening in doctor's appointments for this. That's different than just the regular checkoff. And we need to have that change. And women don't understand it, and they're suffering in silence.
yeah,
The other statistic that's important, and this statistic came out from the National Institute of Mental Health, and it was absolutely like the how the bell started getting rung, but it wasn't necessarily looking for this. And the correlation was that the age between 45 and 54 is the number one time of completed suicide in a woman's
yeah,
lifespan. And when they came out with that, they're like, "Ooh, that's weird." And why? And then they looked at like, "Oh, that's perimenopause and menopause." And so we don't yet have the right research and enough research that
yeah,
is actually saying exactly this is why, but we know through deduction that is the case. And again, we're not supporting women. And when I heard that statistic, although obviously I find that to be absolutely horrific, I realized that if that's the highest number of completed suicide, then the women who are suffering below the level of I'm going to attempt and complete this, of thoughts of depression, of anxiety, the number is vast.
yeah,
So we have to take it seriously,
yeah,
and we have to I think we have to understand our own anatomy. We have to understand where we are in our blood work and where we are with our hormonal
yeah,
levels, and we have to understand that there's not enough out for our age group. So we're going to have to discover it on our own. And although that stinks, I'm frustrated by that. We're going to do it.
yeah,
We're the generation that changed the conversations about periods and changed the products that are available for the young women that are in their fertility prime. We're going to be the generation that changes the mental health of perimenopause and menopause.
yeah. So a few things I want to address, which is your notion of change, which I do think we changed also pregnancy.
Hmm.
Took back,
Agreed.
we took
Yes.
back pregnancy
Postpartum.
from the
Sure.
patriarch,
Hmm.
and we said it's on our terms, it's our body, it is our baby, it is our birth.
Yes.
And I think with that came this real awareness around postpartum.
Hmm.
And for those of you, I suffered from it, and
Hmm.
it took me out in a way that I had. I mean, I'm a high octane anybody, and I just went down.
Yeah, out of your control.
It was
Hmm.
totally out of my control, but there were protocols in place with my providers, from my OBGYN to, nurse practitioners, whoever, to check in.
Yes.
And that protocol, to your point, hasn't been put in place yet for
Hmm.
perimenopause in particular, and then menopause.
Hmm.
So to end on a, not end because we have more, but
Right.
when you are ending your sessions with your patients who are coming to you being like,
Hmm.
I could spit nails at someone, or I could crash my
Hmm.
car into
Right.
someone, or I'm like
Yes. Yeah.
debilitatingly sad. what advice, what are your kind of top five or top three? How can women, whether it's treatments, is it lifestyle, like what is your toolkit that you say to her, okay,
Mhm.
I want you to think about these things?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I just love your asking it. And I really want women to hear this. My precursor to this is starting at 35, anyone who I know has a menstruating body, or clients of mine, I start talking about it. I educate them first. And I say this may feel early, but you want to be armed with information now. And I do a whole session on perimenopause and menopause. And
Yeah.
I say, here are the questions. I just spoke at Yale this past weekend to a group of therapists. And one of the women held her hand up and she said, I'm so embarrassed to say this. She said, I've never even heard the word perimenopause,
Yeah.
never even heard it. And she's an active therapist in this. So my point of this is you have to be educated. And I think uh, it's, you have to build a support system of friends, of those who are educated. You know, that friend that you're like, what is the latest blah 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 in town? And she's like, oh, blah blah blah, and let me just send them to you. You need to find the person who is in your friend group that is the
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause expert, knows the people to follow on the social media, knows
Yeah.
the doctors that are in town that know what they're doing, or become the person that's doing it, and then share all the information. And that includes therapists too. And so I like teaching people that you go in and you ask, are you a part of the menopause society? What is your education beyond medical school? I know you didn't receive it, it's not your fault, but what are you doing to ask that? And I it's not in this place of grilling somebody or having a physician feel
Yeah.
on their heels, because it's they can't help what they didn't get.
Yeah.
But what you do want to find is somebody who has done the work outside of what their education was. And I think once you hit 40, so 35, start looking for those. When you've hit 40 at the latest, you need to be working with all providers that are part of your health. And even if it doesn't seem exactly like, it's not a GYN, if it's an internist, if it's family physician, ask them
Yeah.
how educated are you. And then same with therapist. And the number with therapists is going to be very, very low. Yep. And I know that, and I'm saying this in an ideal way, as if healthcare insurance isn't an issue or it isn't hard to find a therapist, but this is like, ideally, this is what you're looking for. And once you find that person, you share
Yeah.
it with
Yeah.
everybody. So that's one thing. And the next thing I like to do is I want you to I want you to start becoming the keeper of your data. And this is really important if you're somebody that moves. And so you're going to be changing providers or changing cities. Always have a hold of your records. What we know is, and I'm not giving medical advice, but what we know is that, having one set of blood work is not really going to tell you a whole lot. You need to
Yep.
have a variety. And if you can afford to do stuff out of your insurance or find ways to get your blood work, even if it's just once a year,
Yeah.
start having that, have your own perimenopause and menopause notebook, and use that as a way of like treating, like paying attention to how your hormones are changing and how your symptoms are related to it.
Yeah.
And not to become obsessive with it, but it is, for some it's pretty gradual. Like I just worry more, or I can't drive on a bridge anymore. To others, it's like I just had something that I think's a panic attack, and that's new for me. And if you can
Right.
relate that to your blood work or your data, that can make a pretty big difference in it. Another thing to do is to keep track. If you can go even just now, start writing down what if you had any mental health interaction with your periods, if you were pregnant, with pregnancy, before, during, and after.
Yeah.
And because we know that there is going to be likely a link that if you had any emotional difference in PMS or PMDD, postpartum depression,
Postpartum.
anything like that,
Yeah.
you're going to have it. You are most likely going to have an issue of mental health
Yeah.
in perimenopause, especially in perimenopause.
Sure.
And then I like to be able to put in the forefront in your verbiage of like, and part of my research, the goal is to have a short but a normalizing thing that we ask every physician and every therapist is asking for. But we need to be asking ourselves too. So ask yourself and ask your friends that are going through this, like, not just how's your mental health, although that's a great starting point, but it's like, are you feeling anxiety? Or this is how I'm doing it. So start sharing it and start asking our friends.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also learned that when you say depression and you say anxiety, not everyone knows what that means. And so they don't know what the symptoms are. I'm going to let you talk. I'm talking a lot.
Well,
I want to.
no, I was going to say that I think that you're putting words and examples to it. Like your patient who said, I wanted to hit this car, right? Like that it came out of nowhere or whatever. Or you talked about this flatness, like things that used to bring me joy. I have no connection to, I have a passiveness to life, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't think that people have attribution to the change, particularly by the way, because you're running around,
Mhm.
you're probably maybe raising kids, you probably maybe have aging parents who are
Right.
driving you nuts.
Yes.
Like, it is not so. When do you get to put the oxygen mask on you,
Yeah.
foremost, but then put language to the feelings that you're having or the symptoms that you're having? And I think that language oftentimes, it's really important to understand that and be able to describe it, right? Because big words like depression, it's like, I'm not depressed.
Oh,
I'm
right.
fine.
Yes.
Like, I'm fine. And I
Hmm.
think pulling back and beginning to understand, or to your point, seeing the changes, the little ripples that might be happening actually matter,
Yeah.
and
I
being
couldn't.
present with that and putting language to it. Because it's like, I'm not anxious. I've never had anxiety. I'm totally fine.
Right.
But actually, these are things that are happening that have never happened before.
Mhm.
And so,
Yes, and sometimes racing thoughts don't get put under the umbrella of anxiety. They just like, oh yeah, I just worry. That's just me. Or irritability just is, well, yeah, I'm irritable. I've got a teenager
I've
and an
always
aging
been like
parent.
this. Yeah.
Yes, right. All of that. But and it's okay when it's manageable. But if you don't understand that it can be a cluster of symptoms that then is saying like, hey, something is going on with your hormones and something is happening inside of you, and we've got to figure out a different treatment proactively or in reaction to this, that makes an enormous difference in having a change of this. So I had a hysterectomy in August, and so I went into menopause very quickly, like within a day. And I am a therapist. I talk about menopause all the time. I am armed with all the information. I've got the experts on my phone. I was like, I got this. I am like, like I'm gonna have this model therapy. And I filmed myself every single day leading up from the decision to have the surgery to the surgery, and then for a couple weeks afterwards. And I sent the footage later to my business manager, Caitlin, and we're compiling it together. And she actually came over to help me with my surgery prep, and so she saw me in this.
Yeah.
But when she said it was over an hour and a half worth of footage that altogether, that bless her heart she watched. She called me. She's like, my goodness, I had no idea, and I was literally in the house with you, and you are crying. And at the time, I'm crying on my phone. And I was like, I can't believe I'm one of those people crying on my phone. But I did it to have the
Yeah.
videos for everybody because my emotions leading up to the surgery and then my experience afterwards is so different than I expected. And I hadn't had a lot of mental health issues going into this. So I wasn't expecting it to feel this way. Or I thought that I would be able to control it. And and again, I teach this, I lecture about this. And for me to experience that and feel like, oh, wow, my toolbox just got thrown out. And what do I do? And I also kept thinking, and it's really when I had that experience of like, I know what to do and I don't know what to do, then what is it like for those who don't have access to
Yeah.
this information, these
Yeah.
people? So that's again another reason why I said like we have to share with each other. You mentioned about like the life load of everything going on, which can cover out like if you're not in a great relationship, of course you're going to be irritable and feeling
Yeah.
miserable, and so that would add to you not sleeping well, you're stressed, or your teenager isn't doing something well. We can attribute a lot of mental health symptoms and hormonal change led symptoms to life. And sometimes it is that. But clustering it with as much as we're going through at this time of
Yeah.
life, and it's career, it's aging parent, it's everything that you named, it's identity, it's our body changing. It's the number one thing that people wrote that they were worried about in the survey was the change of their body, that seeing it and experiencing it, not knowing what to do about it,
Yeah.
has added a huge mental load to them,
Yeah.
and not feeling like it's acceptable to say, I don't like that I've gained 25 pounds since this, and we're supposed to love everything. It is acknowledging that we are grieving losses. We are trying to find who we are.
Yeah.
We are the generation that we can have it all, and we
Yeah.
know how hard that is. We are often feeling like we are just carrying the load of the world on our backs. And I'm sure the generation above us is like, girl,
Yeah.
same
Whatever.
with us.
Yeah. My mom
Like,
is listening to
yeah,
this right now, being like, "Oh, get over yourself,
yeah,
Melissa." She for
exactly.
sure is, by the way.
Right. Yes,
My
I
mom.
know. Say, so, and I get it. And hi, mom, and we get it too. And we're going to say the same things for the women 20 years younger than us. I do get it. But still, I think is truthful that this is a time of our lives in a woman's lifespan, no matter what era she's
Yeah.
in, that there's a lot going on, and that in and of itself is really difficult. And then you add hormonal changes that are affecting your ability to handle this. And I like to, like, I wish there was an Inside Out movie for menopause.
Oh,
And because I
there
think
will be.
that,
There
yes,
has to be.
has to be,
There has to
there
be.
has to be, it has to be her mom goes
Yes.
through it.
Yes.
Because and what I would have there be in the script would be like an introduction, like, oh, hello, anger and perimenopause and menopause. Oh, hello, sadness. You're very different. And it would change colors. It would still be red, but it'd be a different kind of
Yeah.
red. And you have to get used to this new color scheme of what your feelings are like. And I think if you can look at it like that, as in not as in doomsday, like,
No.
oh, the world is about to end, but just a reintroduction to ourselves, to our body, to our mental health, and then I think that makes an enormous difference. I also want to say that, kind of going back to a statistic that, again, awful research, we don't have nearly enough, but there is one research out there that specifically looked at the difference of races, of how different races are experiencing perimenopause and menopause. And what they found, and they only were really comparing Black women and white women,
Mhm.
that Black women were experiencing perimenopause and menopause earlier and having more and longer and more intense symptoms. And one of the things that we also know from a different study is the longer your perimenopause and the more intense your experience of it, the higher likelihood that you're going to have a mental health symptom as a part of
Right.
it. So we can extrapolate. We don't have the information. The research is awful, but we can deduct then that the women who are not white, but specifically Black women, most likely are going to be having a higher incidence of mental health issues, and we are not educated in that. And when I'm speaking to Black women, they are saying that they didn't know this either.
Yeah.
And that is a huge problem. And we are not prepared in the mental health world to provide that. And then you add on all the other aspects of the distrust in the mental health and the medical system.
Medical system.
Uh,
Black
with
American.
systematic races, all of that is very troubling to me. And we don't have the breakdown of race in those statistics of perimenopause and menopause suicide thoughts and completions, but I would imagine that it's going to be reflected in that
Yeah.
as well. And that's not acceptable. We just can't have that be the case. So looking out for yourself, if you are a woman of color, and if you have friends and people that you care about, that of making that statistic known, and also advocating for help earlier, and naming the symptoms for our women who are women of color.
Yeah.
And then last, it would be I my ideal thing would be start doing all the mental health shifts proactively, even if you are not experiencing
Mhm.
this in your own life. So it is, and finding out what you like. So I love cold plunging. Cold plunging is something that has been a really big change for me, for my mental health
Yeah.
and for my physical health, but other people think it's the worst thing in the world. Saunas can be an amazing thing too. Learning meditation for the first time, learning even just box breathing, learning how to strengthen your resiliency, as you were talking about, like the bandwidth of all of this and your ability to get to it now, makes an enormous difference. And if you're already in this stage in perimenopause and menopause, it's not too late at all to add these things into the mix. and you have to try different things. It's
Yeah.
box breathing isn't going to work for everybody, nor is a cold plunge, but it's going to work for some. And you find what it works for you. And I have found that it's pretty consistent that once you find the thing that works for you, it makes a difference. And I would particularly learn about like emotional regulation. What are emotional regulation tools?
Yeah.
And then the last thing would be to find therapists who really understand cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. So CBT and DBT are found to be really helpful because CBT is about like helping you change your thoughts,
Yeah.
and DBT is about changing your parasympathetic system, and how that relates to who you are as an emotional being.
I love that. I love that we're ending on proactive ways to begin to empower ourselves on something that can feel out of control that we are not in control of ultimately,
Yeah.
but at least beginning to scaffold how we go into it
Yeah.
proactively feels really, really great. So, okay, here's the last thing. We are going to put all of this information for Dr. Juliana's research. So that will be forthcoming. We began this conversation saying that there isn't enough research. We don't have the data, but having that data impacts and begins to create that foundation, that sediment for change. And so having your voices, having your input, and having your perspective matters. And so we will send that out
Right.
to get
Thank
engagement
you.
with our community, because we're so grateful for the work that you're doing on our behalf.
Thank you
So thank
so
you.
much. And if you are 35 on up, you are eligible to take this survey, and you do not have to have an obvious mental
Yeah.
health symptom in order to take it as well. This is really just I'm trying to get at least 1,000 participants to just give a wide swath. And this is just phase one of research. There's many phases ahead. And I'm so grateful for you and for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for caring about mental health and menopause.
Likewise. Okay. Take care. And I want to say happy
Thank you.
Mother's Day.
And happy Mother's Day to you, Chin. We'll talk
Okay.
soon.
Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.